more power to the people that can practice law their whole lives and are happy doing it. I know some, but I would say I know a whole lot more that aren't that happy doing it. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that I had an escape hatch, and I didn't know it would be poker, but I'm so glad that it was.
Hi, everyone. Today I'm speaking with someone who has taken one of the most fascinating and unconventional paths I've ever come across. He started as a lawyer, mastered the high stakes world of professional poker, and is now a visionary in the wellness space, building a thriving community around cold plunges and saunas. Please welcome Clint, a true example of what it means to take bold risks and redefine success. Clint, your journey is so unique. Can you take us back to the start and tell us what was the first big pivot that you made from law to poker?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's so nice to chat with you and connect with you. I appreciate you asking about all this stuff. Leaving law to poker was an interesting journey. Really, it started with so I'd been playing poker kind of like the entire time I was practicing law, but just very like kind of casually, and then kind of got more serious about it and got really, really interested in it and was starting to study the game a lot and see some success. But really the big pivot point for me was about 7 years into my poker journey or into my law career. I just was having these like knots in my stomach, and they weren't going away. Like law was a very exciting profession to be in, but it was extremely stressful. And about that 7 year mark, it was just like I was starting to notice that like the downsides were really outweighing the upsides. I noticed what it was doing to my health, my physical health, my mental health. And yeah, and so like after feeling those knots in my stomach for a couple of years, I was like, okay, this is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. Like, this is my body's giving me a message like this is not right for me. It wasn't like a just not wanting to put in the effort anymore. It was literally just like I was I was really starting to dread going to work on Mondays, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be something different for me. And so initially, it wasn't just going to plan to do law or poker full time after that, but I was starting to explore different things I can do. And it was just kind of right there. I was at that time, I was really starting to just like make more money with poker, have more success with it. So I thought, you know what, why not just give this a shot? So yeah, I decided to start transitioning out, and yeah, did it a little bit slowly at the beginning, and kind of I went on contract and I practiced law part-time, and I was doing law part-time for a little bit, or practicing law part-time and doing poker part-time, so a little bit of both. But that didn't last long. Very quickly, I was like seeing how happy I was and how much I was enjoying poker, and I wasn't enjoying the law at all anymore, and my heart wasn't in it. So I just kind of fully stepped aside from that.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was like there were multiple signs that were guiding you in a different direction at the time, and one of them being your own body, kind of.
Yeah, for sure. My body was speaking to me loudly, definitely.
Yeah. And how long did you do law for full time?
Yeah, I did law full time for 10 years. I practiced constitutional law and civil rights litigation for a firm here in Long Beach. It was an amazing law experience. Really, it was. I had kind of a really dream experience with it. And even with that, I still wanted out. More power to the people that can practice law their whole lives and are happy doing it. I know some, but I would say I know a whole lot more that aren't that happy doing it. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that I had an escape hatch, and I didn't know it would be poker, but I'm so glad that it was.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting pivot. How would you describe your career and personal evolution in your own words?
Wild. Um, Wild, unorthodox, unexpected, super fun and exciting. It really is like I would have never had an idea that I would have like pivoted and changed careers like twice in my life, during this time frame. And yeah, it's just really, really shown me how exciting life can be when you listen to the nudges, when you follow your heart, when you realize that you don't have to do anything, that you don't have to keep doing things just because you started down a path or because someone says that you do. It's really fun when you just start to like live life moving in alignment with like what your heart is wanting and moving in that direction. It's scary, obviously, very scary, but I would say, yeah, it's made for a very like exciting and now just like fulfilling in life in ways that I couldn't have imagined. So yeah, yeah, kind of a mixed bag of all the things.
Yeah, this is kind of a tangent, but how do you navigate the times when things or like those big changes feel scary? What has helped you in so far in your
Yeah,
path?
it's a good question. Definitely having time to downtime. And I don't mean downtime like just like relaxing, but like stillness, time and stillness to just really feel into what is feeling right for me personally. Like time in nature and specifically time alone in nature is a huge help for me. That always just allows me to like see clearly, to really just like connect to what I'm wanting at my heart, and also just to like kind of receive messages and wisdom from, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe. I find that it speaks so clearly to me when I'm by myself in nature. And every time I do it, I come away with either wisdoms or insights. Either they come to me like in the moment, or they come to me like later after I've been doing it. So that helps a lot. Also having supportive community, friends, and family when I transitioned from law to poker. Even though I was really scared to tell my family, but they were so supportive, like so supportive. That once they listened to me like talk and kind of share where I was at and like what was important to me and why I was doing what I was doing, yeah, they were totally on board and supportive. So yeah, definitely having the supportive friends and family was very helpful. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. How do you feel that like your background as a lawyer prepared you for success in poker?
Mm. That's a good question. So it's interesting. Even though it sounds so different, right? People are like, "Whoa, those are two really different professions," right? They actually require like really, really similar skill sets, believe it or not. There's a lot of like analytical reasoning, a lot of strategy, logic, gamesmanship, reading people, like maneuvering and like kind of like persuasive, kind of like persuasive arguments, right? So like in law, you would do it with writing a persuasive brief or crafting a really persuasive argument to speak in court. And in poker, you're going to kind of like craft a creative story with the way that you're playing your hand, right? With all of the things that go into that. And so that you're thinking like two or three steps ahead of your opponent, right? And kind of like I'm thinking that he's doing this and he's thinking and I'm doing that. And so really thinking ahead and then like, okay, how can I get him to think what I want him to think by playing a hand in a certain way, right? So,
So
yeah.
fun. Yeah, I can see that now, like the connection, how it can, like you kind of have like the same intent.
hmm Yeah, yeah. It's wild. And there's actually a lot of overlap between like lawyers and poker. There's a lot of poker players that become lawyers and a lot of lawyers that become poker players. It's just funny. It's just poker is like just so much more disfavored, right? It's like if you're like you say you're a lawyer, like, oh, so
Yeah.
successful, like how proud you are, then you're like, oh, so and so is a poker player, and like the first thought might be like, what a degenerate loser. And it's like, but really using similar skill sets. It's kind of like how I tell people this. It's like a better example comparing like more like apples to apples is comparing a poker player versus a stock trader, right? A stockbroker. And someone, you're really taking calculated risks. It is gambling, right? But you're taking calculated risk and playing the odds. And so you're kind of like taking decisions over and over and over where you might lose on some of them in the short term. But if you really do your work properly, you're going to be put yourself in a position where you're going to be taking these small edges in your favor over and over and over again. And so, one of them is just done in like skyscrapers in New York City, and the other one was done in like, casinos and basements and wherever else poker is played, right? So, but it really is like really, really similar skill sets.
Yeah, that is funny how like the perception can be so different, but it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So going from poker to wellness, what motivated you to transition from poker to health and wellness in that?
So I think a couple things. The first thing was
Was
when I
there, sorry to interrupt, was there anything in between or was it pretty much like the transition was poker to wellness?
I mean, no, there wasn't really anything in between that I did in between that, but like the part of my journey started though, like earlier. It started really when I transitioned out of poker to law, or sorry, law to poker. it really it created freedom for me. It created freedom in terms of like time, energy, all of these things. And so kind of the first thing I did when I started playing poker was I got so much healthier so fast. Like my stress levels went down. I had free time to like see the sun during the day and like walk barefoot on the grass with my dog at like 10 a.m. and go to play poker in the afternoons. I had time to cook meals more, eat healthy. So I kind of just got myself healthy in all of the ways. So kind of the first that was the first part of my evolution was, I kind of like a lot of people, I struggled with health symptoms throughout my life, right? So whether it was skin issues, chronic headaches, fatigue, I could name other ones too, but like really it just when I really cleaned up my diet and I started eating whole healthy foods and started seeing the sun more, making contact with the ground more, doing that was when I started to discover things like breath work as well. And I got so much healthier. And so I was just like, I was kind of for a while, I wasn't even like planning on doing anything in the health and wellness space. I just found myself wanting to tell everyone that I could about how amazing this discovery I was, that by doing all of these things that no doctor ever told me to do my entire life, I suddenly felt better than I ever felt. And I tell people I feel better in my 40s than I did in my 20s. And, I'm like, okay, I want everyone else to feel as good as I'm feeling. So another thing in my journey was really it was the kind of like the rise to prominence of podcasts and the availability of information to us, right? That like where we used to get all of our health information from doctors growing up, right? And I just took everything they said, at face value and assumed it was all true and right. And then I started listening to podcasts and going down the rabbit hole and reading books. And I'm like, oh, wow, I've never heard any of this stuff. And it wasn't so much that like my doctors were telling me like contrary information. It was just stuff that like wasn't out. It wasn't in the lexicon. It wasn't being taught in medical school, right? And so, yeah, just learning and educating myself so much and then doing them and just seeing how fast I was seeing results. So, yeah, I would say it was like me kind of being that like the experimenting on myself with it and seeing it, learning all this stuff, learning all the science about why my body is healing from doing these things. And then so that was kind of like setting the stage. And then when COVID happened and the world shut down. So I always played poker in person at casinos. I really enjoyed it. It was really social, super fun. I loved it. I would go to the casino. That was my time there. My work time, I called it the poker office. And then I would leave, come home, and it felt great for me. But when COVID happened, all the casinos closed down indefinitely for a while. And that was kind of scary and interesting because there goes my, kind of like livelihood for who knows how long. And so I decided to play like online poker and play in these online clubs that were forming around that time. And it just was not satisfying to me at all. I mean, to just like put it bluntly, I was basically sitting alone in my condo, staring at a screen, staring at blue lights, pressing buttons, trying to take other people's money. And there was just like, none of the things that I liked about poker were present in that. And it was just me just doing the same sort of like, it felt soul sucking the way that like, law was feeling towards me, towards the end where I'm just sitting, staring at a computer screen and not interacting with humans and using the sort of skills that were fun for me to use at the poker table in a live setting. So I basically used COVID as those initial few months of COVID as like a time to reassess and to really feel into what it was I want to do with the rest of my life, or at least next. And a couple of things around that were, so I always knew that like I wasn't going to do poker full time for the rest of my life. Like I think going into 2020, I was thinking like, all right, I probably down to do poker for another like 2 to 3 years full time and just like give it everything I've got and just like try to earn as much money as I can doing it and then transition into something else. I always kind of envisioned myself going into business for myself. I think that was just kind of an image I held for myself since I was a kid, but for sure since I was in my 20s. I just kind of knew that like, okay, eventually one day I'm going to be running a business. Like I'm not going to be working for someone else. And so yeah, COVID just kind of hit the fast forward button on that for me a little bit, like it did for a lot of people. So yeah, so really, it really came down to like the ultimate like pivot point for me was it was like around March, June of 2020, and I was spending, or no, May or June of 2020, and I was spending a lot of time in nature, hiking in the mountains. Just got my dog at that time, and yeah, so I would just say I was in a really receptive state, right? So I was talking to you about how I receive when a lot when I'm in nature, especially solo, and so that's what it was. It was me and my dog hiking a lot, and I came back from I can't remember if I like hiked a couple times that week, but I remember it was after spending a lot of time in nature and meditating a lot and journaling a lot, and I got flooded with a vision. I call it a download from the universe, but really I got flooded with all this ideas for like a wellness center that would have all of these aspects to it. And it was like an overwhelming amount of information. It was honestly, it was like, it almost like, it didn't hurt my brain, but it was like, I have to get this out of my brain so that I can continue living because it was that heavy, right? That was that like dense of information. I remember I drove to my condo, I grabbed pad and paper, I went over to the park over here on the bluff and sat under a tree and just wrote out everything that had just come into my awareness. And within 15 minutes, I had written out like a 3.5 page business plan for this kind of like community-based wellness center. And that was the start of it. So I'll let you ask me whatever you want to ask from there. But like really, my first thought was like, okay, this sounds amazing. Also, I don't do any of these things. Like, what am I supposed to do with this information? Right? I'm like, I just retired from law and I'm a poker player. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so that was almost 5 years ago now, 4.5 years ago. So yeah, a lot has changed since then.
Yeah. No, that sounds again very interesting. Again, the whole transition from one thing to the next. It sounds like you, with every step, you kind of were just like listening to like those like intuitive nudges that you were getting. And well, the last one seems like it was more than a nudge, it was like a push, and it sounds like it was more clear. Was there any personal experience that sparked your passion for specifically like cold plunges and saunas?
I mean, really, it was my just experience with it, right? And so it's not, I would say it's not just cold plunging and sauna, it's breath work also. Movement too. But really like, I had known about how good movement feels, but there's different aspects of movement, but that we can get into possibly. But with the breath work and cold plunge and sauna, like I had heard about the benefits of them and I'd started to like in them a little bit. And, I just remember learning some really simple breathwork techniques where I just felt so amazing. And I was like, why did no one teach me this? Like when I was a lawyer and stressed out of my mind and going to court and a nervous wreck, like having to speak in front of, a three-judge appellate panel and why didn't anyone just tell me that if I just elongated my exhales for twice as long as my inhales and did that for 5 minutes, that I would be calm, clear, cool-headed, and able to just like access information so much easier and be able to speak more slowly and just be out of that fight or flight mode. No one ever taught me that. So when I just kind of learned about this on my own, just from like podcasts and books and stuff at first. And so it's one of those things where you notice it so immediately, right? It's just like your state will change so quickly. And then so somewhere along that journey, I started to explore with like cold plunging and sauna as well. And then when it really like kicked into high gear for me or like when it really like showed me how potent and how powerful this can be was I was going through, a pretty difficult time in my life. I had just ended a relationship. I was going through a breakup. I was coming off of shoulder surgery, so I couldn't, work out, do stuff like that. It was the middle of a heat wave, so it was like 115 degrees or 10 degrees, whatever it was, like down here. And I was living in San Diego briefly at that time, in like a little bit inland, and yeah, I couldn't even go like hiking with my dog or anything. And I was just like, yeah, so I was just going through it, right? I was sad. I was isolated too. I was very alone and, just feeling so down and depressed and couldn't go like move my body, things that would normally make me feel good, right? So I'm like, okay, I know some things. So I started doing breath work, cold plunge, sauna, like every day. And I started doing it every day and I would do it and I would do them all together. And I would, after doing them, I just noticed I'm like, I feel so happy. Like, I feel like I don't just feel okay, like physically, like I feel like my mood is elevated. Like I feel happy and hopeful. And I could just tell that like my brain chemistry changed, right? I could feel it on, and it didn't make any sense to me because I was like, but I'm not happy right now. I'm sad. My everything's in shambles, right? And but I kept doing it and I just kind of saw that. And then I was talking to I started talking to people about my experience with it. And a lot of people were sharing with me that they're like, doing all of these things has like really saved me too. It has really, a lot of people were in similar boats and going through it. And then so, yeah, that was just a really big, like, I was like, okay, like I need to bring this to the world. But really I also saw with that was like the power of, it just showed me again, like the power of connecting with other human beings. And so I was doing these things while I was talking to other people that were going through similar experiences doing it. And that power of having community and being with other people while you're doing it versus just like being home alone at your house doing it by yourself, that was kind of the culmination of kind of like what I ended up transitioning towards in my journey. But yeah, that was kind of how it happened.
Well, I don't want to really get into this too much, but it kind of also sounded like you were almost like stuck in your story of what you were dealing with. Then by doing all these things, it kind of, at least briefly, would get you out of that mindset and mood. And you were like, well, like I'm not technically supposed to be feeling happy, but it kind of like broke that loop that
Oh
you.
yeah. For sure, for sure. Absolutely, it did. Yeah, yeah. It stopped the loop, but then it also like it is two things. So it did that, and then it's like it literally changes our dopamine, norepinephrine levels, right? It changes the chemistry in our bodies on a cellular level. So it's like literally, it's a whole lot easier to to not feel stuck and down and down and down when you're like, oh, I'm like, oh, I can just naturally change my brain chemistry and it's available to me every day. And so this isn't like it's not like you don't feel what we're going through, or it's not like trying to block and stop our experience or like the, challenging emotions that we get through in life. But it is an amazing tool to go, all right, feeling what I'm feeling, allow that to happen, and then go, cool, how can I actually support myself and like moving through and beyond this now, right? It was just a really, really transformative time for me with that.
I think we kind of covered this question with the how did you feel like you overcome the fear of starting over in a completely new field? Do you feel like you
Um,
covered that fully?
I mean, no, because this is so much different now. So, like going into poker was different because I had been playing, it was such a subtle transition, right? I had been playing poker on like kind of casually and then on the side for like a number of years while I was practicing law. So like I had kind of like built up the confidence, right? And like I was tracking my results and I was like, oh, like I'm
Yes.
actually making enough money doing this per hour, right? I'm like, and I could extrapolate out and kind of see that. So, it's still scary, but I had that transitioning into like the health and wellness space out. I have dealt with so much imposter syndrome and just like, who am I to do this? The things, right? And so I would say no, it's just been like a continuous process of hearing that voice and going, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, I hear you. I'm going to do it anyway. Obviously, like as time goes by and like learning more and more. And I've since, I studied functional medicine health coaching for a year. I studied breath work and became a breathwork facilitator. So, and then starting to like coach people and see their transformations and then to lead breath work and see how that's benefited people. And, so it's a process over and over. But at the beginning, I mean, like I didn't even know where to start at the beginning. I was like too scared to start, but I told people my story of what happened. And so there were some people in my life that were like, you've got to follow this nudge. Like this is you're meant to do this. And they would see how I would light up talking about this stuff. And so, it was kind of like, okay, there's something happening here, but the yeah, the getting over the fear of it. And I mean, it's just continue. Like it still comes up for me, especially like the bigger that like my vision gets and my dream gets, like the bigger the fears get with it, right? They match it. But it's just kind of like, it's like I was talking with a buddy of mine about like when we're in a rut with our, say like our wellness, say we're not on our eating or working out habits or whatever it is, right? It's like, let's not plan like 15 things we're going to do to jumpstart, right? Let's just take like one step or two steps. Let's stack some small wins, right? So it's like, cool. What am I going to, what's the one thing I'm going to do like every day this week, right? Not what's the seven things I'm going to do, right? Or like, what are two things I can do tomorrow? And then you build a little bit with that. And so very similar thing with like transitioning into a new career and keeping going with this dream, in the face of big fears. It's just like, cool, like let's take one step and get through that. And then it's like, okay, now I have all of these like, all of these wins in the rear view mirror of like, oh, remember when I faced that and like I thought that was insurmountable and then I overcame that and then another thing, right? So now it's like there's this momentum and confidence that comes with it to where even if I don't have it figured all out, or even if I feel, terrified or face big challenge, I'm like, okay, like this is doable. This is doable, And then, as you start to come along that journey, I've met so many incredibly amazing human beings that have just like been such a massive part of this journey and what I'm building right now that it's like, one of my friends, Kaylee, she says like it's impossible for us to fail because we are all in this together. We're all moving and collectively building on, collectively and what we're building together, but also our individual efforts, but we are doing it together as a community and have each other. So it's like, and it's like kind of like, you are who you surround yourself with, right? And I've now, attracted all of these people in my life that I am building and doing life with in this space where it's like, yeah, it's like we're not gonna failure is just not an option. Like we're not going to allow each other to make that happen. And it's just not going to happen when we're just surrounded by all of these people who are just kind of like rising alongside with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say is what's the most important lesson you've learned from these career shifts?
Life is short. Do what you want to do. Like, yes, like life is short. Do what you want to do, and also like it leads me to have an open mind to like maybe I'm going to do something different in like 7 years. It seemed like roughly every like, you know, about every 7 years, like 5 to 10 years, I've kind of shifted and transitioned. So it makes me like it just leaves me with the mentality of like, oh, let's stay curious. Let's stay really, really curious about the future and excited because who knows what's going to happen. Because if you had told me that like, hey, you're going to practice law for 10 years and then you're going to transfer and you're going to play poker professionally for 5 years and then you're going to completely pivot and you're going to open this, you know, social wellness center, be in the health and wellness space, doing all this stuff, I would have said like, no way. That I don't see that being possible. How does that happen? And so it leaves me really like curious and fascinated for like, holy shit, like what is going to happen and what's going to happen? Like, where will I be 10 or 15 years from now? And that just allows me to feel like really, really excited. And it makes life feel like, like this, like kind of like it's a movie. And I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next, and just surrender to that.
If you're passionate about health and helping others through deep personal transformation, I want to share with you something that changed my own journey. And that's the Being True to You training certification. I did the certification in 2022, and it gave me the tools to support people in a way that truly felt aligned with my values. Being True to You is a certification that helps you guide others through life transitions, personal growth, and even plant medicine integration, all with a holistic approach and integrity. Whether you're looking to expand your practice, start coaching, or deepen your impact, this program is an incredible way to do it. If this resonates with you, I have a referral link when you can learn more and sign up. As always, I always recommend things that I believe in and that I either use or have done myself. So check the link below to see if it's the right fit for you. It's such a difference from like whenever you feel like you're facing like the fears, even
Hmm.
just the way you speak of it, like the fears, and then like when you feel like, oh, like life is short and like just staying curious and the excitement behind just staying open.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's not always easy to do that, right? So I get it, like life has pressures and there's realities of life and responsibilities. And so it's hard not to like force or contract or sometimes, but it's like the more we can stay open and trusting and surrendering while we're still taking actions, right? But like not being so attached to it's going to be this specific way or this specific way, and then just allow things to unfold. I mean, it feels so much better to live life that way, but it also just allows for things to unfold for us so much easier.
Yeah. And the ability to be able to like hold both, like you're gonna continue to experience both the fear and the excitement of it. And
Totally. Totally. And that's kind of what I look at. It's like fear is like the guidepost of where we need to go next or where we're supposed to go next. So whenever fear comes up, it's just like, oh, I have fear around this. Okay, cool. All right, let's keep going, right? Obviously, we can use discernment to see if it's like something that we really should like, like it's our yeah,
yeah.
like something that really is not good for our highest selves. But we can use that discernment to be like, okay, this is good for me, and I'm scared. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, so what does wellness mean to you?
And to me, it's just about like it's feeling amazing and getting the most out of life, right? Like, it's caring for ourselves and these like beautiful vessels that we've been gifted, right? On all levels, right? Like the body, but like they're not they're not separate, right? Our mind, our body, our souls, they're all related, they're all intertwined, they're all support each other. And so wellness is just about like let's give these things what they want and what they need so they can thrive, so we can like get the most out of life while we're doing this thing called life, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And why is community so important in the wellness space that you're building?
Ooh, I'm so glad you asked me this. So I mean, I'll just say, like, long story short, like, I think community has been the missing ingredient from health and wellness for way too long, way too long. We don't heal and thrive in isolation. We are absolutely social, tribal creatures as human beings, and we weren't meant to like just sit alone in a house and, work out and do push-ups and do breath work and do all of these things and just by ourselves, right? Like we're meant to be with each other. And there's a study after study that's showing that like we thrive around each other, right? Like our cells thrive on love. The more love we can pour into ourselves, and into ourselves, the more our body is going to thrive, right? And that love comes not just from ourselves, it comes from other human beings, right? And so I've kind of just like that was part of my download that I was starting to receive. And like obviously like COVID was a big impetus for this because we all saw it, right? Everyone's come out of it. Everyone's like, fuck this. We're not supposed to be isolated from each other like this. And we started to notice how isolated maybe we were before COVID
Yeah.
even happened, right? COVID shined a light on it, but we were already, all those things were already there that were making us more and more separate and more, just not together with each other. And community is the way we lived for thousands of years, and we've only been doing it differently for a short period of time, and it's not going well. And so that was like the main part of my message was like community, like this wellness center that you're going to open, it is going to bring community into it. And so, I've just said like forever, it's like we do these things to make us feel amazing, but I want to create a space where we can do all of these things that make us feel amazing and do them together in community and like watch the connections that just like flourish and thrive when we're in these states of taking care of ourselves so well, as opposed to what's happening when we're connecting to each other, when we're like putting poison in our bodies at a bar, right? And it's just like, connections happen that way, but for the most part, they don't tend to be the best connections, right? Or like, there might be fun times had, but it's just different when we're in these states, these elevated states of love, of connection to ourselves, of just like thriving and then when we connect with other human beings that are in that same state, it's just like some really magical stuff starts to happen. People find their soulmates. People, come up with ideas and build businesses together and community organizations and grow and evolve in amazing ways. And it's so circular, right? Like that happens. And then in response, our bodies get healthier. Our bodies get healthier because we're thriving and we're feeling this love from community and connection. And so, yeah, that was it. And then I've just kind of started to experience it, right? Like bringing that energy to this community and like just like leading breath work here. You've been to it with us before on Thursday mornings, and like we lead breath work and then we cold plunge because the space that we're building is still in construction right now. And so we're just doing it outside once a week and just like connecting with each other in the morning, doing breath work together, a little bit of movement, cold plunge, and just watching like the connections that have happened there, hearing how many people have said, like, this is what I was looking for, and I didn't know I was looking for, or like they knew they needed something, and like the community they were getting and the connections they were making, it wasn't happening. And it's just like, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, I guess what it has shown me is like what I was told by the universe to do, what I was what I feel like I was called to create, and then what made sense to me. And from my own experience, now I'm seeing it experienced in this community, right? With people. And I think that is, yeah, it just reassured me and been like, okay, they're going in the right direction. Keep doing this, keep doing this. And yeah, and I think there's, it's not just me, other people are doing it too. There's a movement towards this happening all over. And so I'm really, really excited. Like I think we're at an exciting time in life about like reclaiming, you know, our health and really, really acknowledging that like we need love and we need each other and we need to love each other. And it just feels that there's such a big awakening and a shift happening around that. So I'm just stoked to be a part of that process for like the whole collective.
Yeah. I definitely feel like there's like more of it or just like the shift towards it. And I also feel like this is like pretty pioneering of you, I would say. Like there aren't very, like, I don't know of any other wellness center that encourages and like fosters community. And maybe there's more that are going to come, but it's definitely like, I think because you and we are in that space, you see it more. But when
Mhm.
you think of like the world at large, or maybe not the world, but like the Western world, but
Mhm.
not the norm for sure.
Right. Yeah. 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 Thank you. I appreciate that. It does feel like pioneering. And there's some people out there that are doing some cool things. And also like we have some ideas that I'm excited to bring to life that are like I think gonna be different than that's being done anywhere else. And yeah, like I'm just let's all feed off of each other and like, yeah, just I think we're gonna see more and more of this. So yeah, it's fun to be at the forefront of it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Where does your courage to take unconventional paths come from?
That's a good question. I've just always been a little bit of a risk taker. Yeah. I've just always had this perspective of the biggest risk is not like, what if I do this and fail? The biggest risk is like, what if I live my life and never take this risk or take these chances? So I think that's probably at the core of it, that like not wanting to live a life where I didn't, kind of like take some bold, daring action. And yeah, so there's that. And then also like, people say to me sometimes like, how did it's so great. Like people get these ideas or these things or these nudges, but like you actually follow them, right? And I think part of it it's the nudges that I receive and the messages I receive are so loud and clear sometimes. It's like it's kind of hard to ignore them. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, yeah, so that has been helpful for sure too. Just kind of like how and I don't know why. I don't know why I'm getting the messages so loudly and clearly. And I think that's maybe just because I'm meant to do this, right? Like honestly. And so but my hope is it will just like encourage more and more people to like listen to that voice inside of them, right? That kind of like knowing of like, oh, I can be doing something different and it's definitely possible. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to do a couple like rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Okay, poker, law, or wellness, which one has been most challenging?
Oh, it's so tough to answer. They've all been challenging and no one's ever asked me. This is a great question. Um, they've all been challenging in different ways. I'd say probably the wellness only because I'm starting a business and I'm doing every aspect of that. And so like there's just nothing and any business owner can speak to this. There's just nothing like starting a business, right? And especially one with like the vision that I have and kind of the scale I want to do it on. It's just figuring so many things out that I just don't know how to do, right? And just like, wearing like 17 different hats. It's like law was wildly, challenging, obviously, going to law school, taking the bar exam, doing all that. But you're just studying law. You're just studying law. You're doing that, and then you go to work for a law firm, right? Poker, right? It's just like there's challenging parts of it, but you're studying poker, you're just playing poker. Building a business, it's like you're everything, right? You're like, I'm like putting on my contract lawyer skills that I'm reading, or then I'm developing a breathwork class, and then I'm looking at like employment contracts and writing those, and then I'm looking at like architectural details and design, and trying to pick out sound systems, and looking at just every single aspect of the business, right? Taxes, all the things, right? It's so much. So yeah, I'd say this one for sure.
Yeah. What brings you most joy in this chapter of your life?
Seeing people come together and thrive. It is just like it fills my heart. And I'm watching it happen with people and my friends. And yeah, it's like it's overwhelming, like how good it feels at times. Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely. If you could sum up this might not be a rapid fire, but if you could sum up your life philosophy in one sentence, what would it be? I guess it has to be.
I would say it's to be true to your heart, to to live with an open heart, and then be true to your heart and just check in and be like, is this what my heart wants? Is this really what my heart wants and my high self wants? And to live with that mentality. And I think that's a great way to guide like how we engage with ourselves, how we treat ourselves, how the actions we take for ourselves, but then also how we navigate the world and what we do externally and what we choose to spend our time doing in life and build and create how we want to show up in relationships. Yeah, just a more simplified version of kind of like, what would love do?
Yeah, awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to share today that I haven't asked you so far?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. You asked some really good questions, so I appreciate them.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that you don't have an Instagram, but where do you want people to find you if they want to know
I do
more
have
about
an
you?
I do have an Instagram. I was off it for a while. I took a little 3 month hiatus, which I highly recommend everyone doing. Um, but so two Instagram handles. My Instagram handle is just Clint Monfort, CLINT MONFORT. But the wellness center that we're opening, we have an Instagram for that. It is at Celivate_together. So I think Celivate as in elevating our cellular health. So at Celivate_together. And that's where we'll be dropping all the information about all of our founding memberships and discounts. And we're doing a bunch of giveaways as we start to get ready to open later this year. So yeah, it'll all be there.
So thank you so much, Clint, for being with us today and for sharing all your inspiration and your wisdom. So I really appreciate it, you coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.
Sounds
Bye.
good. Thank you, Monica.
So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I truly learned so much about this transformation and the journey that Clint shared with us. And it really was such an inspiration to learn more about his career path transition and journey. And I also wanted to say that this is sort of a sneak peek into what I want to talk more about, things and topics that really matter and that are things that we don't always tackle, but a lot of us are interested in knowing more about to help us live a fuller life. And if you're interested in learning more about how to live well, make sure you check out my next video over here. And I will see you next time. Okay, bye.